All right, guys, we're starting off this upload with an empty shop, and that's because I have a project vehicle that's getting dropped off tomorrow afternoon. So I don't have a whole lot of time to do any crazy stuff right now. So I'm just gonna be catching up on a few odds and ends. The project vehicle that's getting dropped off, we've got a Jeep, and it's gonna get LS swapped. And it's a really cool vehicle, and he's already done a whole bunch of cool off-roady stuff on it. You know, it's got big tires, big axles, cool suspension, but it had been running the original Jeep engine up until now. So we're gonna be changing that, and we're gonna be putting an LS in it. I'll show you all that in the next upload coming up, but today I just had a few things I wanted to catch up and kind of show you on the Suburban. Now, it's a 99 K2500 Suburban. I picked it up some time ago, and I've done a few simple odds and ends to it. I did a transfer case swap going from the NP246 to a 241, just a manual floor shift. I updated some of the interior stuff. I went from the split bench to bucket seats with a floor console, and that's actually what we're going to be working on today. Is one thing is the console, and then I did an 0411 PCM swap, and that's also another thing that I want to give you a few updates on because I made a few tweaks in tuning. The truck's running and driving really smoothly. So I'll just show you those few things. Also, future plans for the Suburban. I have something that came in, and I actually don't think I've shown you guys here on YouTube yet. I know I started a TikTok thing a little while ago, and I think I showed it there. But for you guys who subscribe here on YouTube, I did get a pretty cool part in that's going to solve a really annoying problem about that Suburban. And it's right there, not the exhaust, but it's right there underneath the table. It's an axle. The rear on those Suburbans and K2500 trucks is way narrow. The tires stick in a whole bunch, and it looks awful. And I thought about doing wheel spacers. In fact, I ordered some, and luckily they didn't fit because it gave me the opportunity to do that thing that you see right behind you. So hopefully the plan is as soon as I get this LS swap done in the Jeep, I'll bring the Suburban back in and I'll do a solid axle swap. I'll take care of that weird narrow rear track width. And then I can't wait to show you guys more on that also. So today we're going to be working on the Suburban. I mentioned the console. One other thing I wanted to point out is this guy. It was from a, this was from a 99 to 02 Silverado. Normally these are a full-length console that have a front part attached. But luckily a viewer is actually kind enough to send in one of these factory original, and it even matches, delete plates that covers up the big hole that was in the front there because, like I mentioned, normally there's another part of a console here. I don't want to say rare, but certainly most trucks that do have the console like this are the full-length one. So I was really happy to find that block-off plate. And today we're going to paint this thing and see if we can make it match the rest of the interior. So I went to the local O'Reilly's and I picked up about $28 worth of supplies. This will be hopefully a pretty simple job. I did a little bit of reading online, and the paint color I found that's readily available and will actually match is this medium gray color right there, HVP 109. I also grabbed some adhesion promoter, which will help the paint stick to the plastic, and some cleaner, I guess, which I'm not a painter, but apparently you're supposed to clean things before you paint them. So anyway, it should be a pretty simple operation. I'm just going to take a scuff pad, scuff the thing down, wipe it down, spray on the adhesion promoter, and then spray the color on. Hopefully it'll take me maybe an hour or so tops. I don't know. The color really isn't too bad, this kind of tan, but it definitely doesn't match the OBS gray. So I'm happy to get this thing done, and then we'll wait for it to dry, and then we'll go for a drive. All right, so I've got all the prep work done and we are ready to spray these parts. I've even got the little furnace up there running just to make sure it's kind of warm enough in here. Maybe about 65, 70 degrees will probably be optimal for this paint to go down. Now, I am not a painter, I don't claim to be, and I do not want to be a painter, but I've got to work with some top-notch painters in my career, and I've learned a thing or two from them, so this is kind of the steps that I'm going to take to paint this console. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice is I completely disassembled this thing to paint it. Now, you could just kind of mask it up, but there's a lot of masking that you'd have to do, and it would be difficult to get into all the nooks and crannies, especially like in the back here where that fold-down cup holder goes. There's just no way that you'd kind of properly be able to paint it. I mean, from the outside it might look okay, but to do the job right, I figured we'll just pull the thing apart. Now, the first thing that I did, you'll notice I just kind of wiped everything down with wax and grease remover. And it's an interior part, and there's a pretty good chance that sometime in this console's life it's had armor all or dirty fingerprints or something that is greasy on it, which would interfere with the paint adhering. So I wanted to get that off before I would grind it down further into the plastic with the Scotch-Brite. So wiped it down first thing, then I hit it with some red Scotch-Brite pads, just scrubbed it up a little bit and tried to make the surface, a little bit rougher so that the paint will stick to it. And then I hit it with wax and grease remover one more time. There's one repair that I had to do, and I actually noticed this when I bought the console from eBay. There's a small hairline crack right in the center of the lid, and it's kind of hard to tell now, but it kind of looks like that. When I first saw the pictures, I actually thought it was just like a hair or something sitting on there, but it was a crack. So all I did was just epoxied a wooden popsicle stick on the back there just to kind of hold it together and reinforce it. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of stress in this part or anything, but that'll just make it a little bit stronger. And once the paint's on there, I think you won't be able to tell at all that that was cracked. So anyway, everything is prepped, it's ready. The first thing that we're gonna do is lay down a coat of adhesion promoter. That way the paint will get a better chance of biting into this plastic. And then after that, I just got that vinyl and fabric paint, put probably 2, maybe 3 coats on there. We'll let it dry probably overnight, then we'll get it back in the truck. I waited for the paint to dry overnight. That way it had, you know, as much drying time as possible before handling it. And I got everything clipped back together. And for the most part, assembly was really straightforward. Now, if you are going to attempt to take one of these apart on your own, it's pretty simple, but there's a few gotchas or just little things that you want to look out for. And if you're not careful, you can definitely break something. So let me just show you the couple of spots that you want to look out for. Number one, on the back, to get the insert, the main pocket or cubby insert out of the console, there's a series of screws around the top, but then there are also two more screws down inside, if the camera will see that dark. Those two screws right there you got to take out. But to get those out, you need to get the little cup holder thing out of the way. Now, to do that, there's just two little plastic pegs, one on either side, and basically you just got to kind of spring the outsides of this apart just enough to get them out. Now, I was really worried something would break, but we got that out no problem. Then once you get that apart, there's two more screws. You can't see them, but there's two more screws that hold the black cup holder part to the outside shelf. So that's how that part comes out. Then the back, this panel basically just clips on. There's two metal clips on the bottom and a series of plastic clips up here. That'll get the back panel separate from the main body of the console. Over here, the cup holder insert, that just pulls straight up. There's no clips or anything there. Same thing here. And then on the inside, there's a series of screws that hold this main pocket into the body of the console, like I mentioned. And then the lid. So if you want to take the lid off, you have to separate both halves. And there's a series of plastic clips kind of around the outside. And I did, when I put it back together, I put a little bit of glue in the middle. It looks like there's a couple of lines where this actually was glued from the factory. So I re-glued that. And then the spot I mentioned earlier, actually I don't even think you can see it anymore. It's like right here, but with a little bit of glue on the back and then painting it, you can't even tell that it was cracked at all. Maybe you can just barely see it there. But anyway, I'm real happy with how this has turned out. I'm glad I took it apart. So now it's time to put it back in the truck. There's just 4 bolts on the bottom cubby that hold it to the bracket that I made. And then we'll go for a quick drive. So the console's back in, and the paint match, I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. I mean, just for a can of spray paint off the shelf, it's slightly different, but honestly, there's a lot of variation in tones of gray between this whole interior. So I'm really pleased with it. So this console job is done. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm really happy that I went with the 99 to 02 console over the 88 to 98. Anyway, now I'm just going to do a quick update on the 0411 swap, just to kind of give you guys my impressions now that I've had it in for a little while, and I've actually made a few more tweaks on the calibration, and I think this thing is dialed in pretty much spot on. Okay, so whenever I found the original L29 tune file from the HP Tuners repository, there was some 29 pound/hour injected data in there, and I had to change that out. So I found another tune file that supposedly had good L29 19 pound/hour injector data, but it wasn't exactly spot on. The thing would idle a little bit funny. It seemed like it might have been a little rich, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it just wasn't 100% like it was before with the black box. So I did a little bit of looking, and it turns out that the injector data that's in the black box computer, you actually can copy and paste that over into the 0411. Now, most stuff you cannot, like the VE table is totally different, the Spark table totally different, but the injector data, most of that you could just copy and paste directly over, and I think in total there were about 6 different tables that I changed, and they weren't off by much. But the biggest one was like the injector offset versus voltage. I think that one in the lower voltage ranges was like way off, and there was 1 or 2 more that there were slight differences. So anyway, I copy and pasted that over, and that way the injector data is exactly as it was in the black box computer. And that seemed to make it run a lot smoother. It idled a little smoother. Startup seemed to be just a little bit better. So I figure that's a great move in the right direction. Now, in terms of just overall performance and how it drives with the 0411 swap, we're miles ahead of the black box computer. Now, I'm not going to say that simply swapping the computer gave it more horsepower, because that's not really true, but some of the calibration changes that we were able to make after swapping computers is what made the big improvements. So there's, I think, 3 major changes that we made. Number 1 was torque management. Just about every GM truck has some amount of torque management, which is basically where it pulls timing and pulls horsepower away during the shifts to kind of protect the transmission. Now, some tuners will say, oh, just get rid of it altogether, which I don't really like doing that, because it's there to protect the transmission. But you can definitely dial back how much timing it pulls back. And I think I'm at like 40% or 50% of the original torque management. The other thing, the timing table is, from what I remember, they copied over an L18 timing table, and it has a few more degrees in it. And that's definitely going to give you a little bit more horsepower, rather. Just, you got to make sure you run a little bit better fuel so it doesn't knock. I'm actually doing a data log right now just to kind of see any knock activity in it. But anyway, so you've got less timing pulled for torque management, and you've got a little bit more timing advance in the main high octane spark table. And then finally, where was I going with this? Oh, fuel mixture. So you can control what the mixture is under wide open throttle, and I leaned it out just a little bit. I think I'm in the low 13s, where I think from the factory it was at the high 12s. I don't remember the numbers exactly right off the top of my head, but I leaned it out just a little bit. And doing all those things is going to add a little bit more horsepower. All in, it might only be another 10 or 15 horsepower, maybe the same torque. Who knows, it might not even be that, but it's definitely more responsive, and it definitely puts a little bit more power down. So that's going to bring this upload to an end, and I got to say thank you for watching all the way to the end. I do appreciate it. And a few things to look forward to in the coming days or weeks. Number 1, we've got an LS swap in a Jeep that's going to be started in the very next upload. Number 2, we're going to be doing a cam swap, I believe. That's probably the next thing I'm going to do for my own projects in the Suburban. We've got the Pro Touring Truck Shootout coming up in April. We're going to be taking Ugly Truck down to that. What else? The different solid axle we're going to be putting in the Suburban. Also, a quick plug for the merch. Head on over to tolmanperformance.com. We got these really cool lightweight hoodies like the one I'm wearing now. They're kind of made from like a t-shirt material, which is cool because it's kind of getting a little bit warmer in some parts of the country. And they fit a little bit long, which is good if you're tall like me, because, you know, you gotta keep yourself covered up. So head on over there to check it out. Other than that, you guys know what to do on this video. Click the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you back on the next one.